Welcome everybody. My name is John Windsor. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the current president of the ACT Party. And the members will know that we are currently undergoing an election process for the president's position. So you will have soon be receiving some voting papers for that position, along with the positions of the 3 new regional councillors. We've had a change in the regional council structure. That will all be explained to you when the voting papers come out to you very soon. Just at this point, I'd like to say, I'm sure there are a large number of members in the room. If you are not a member of the ACT Party, I'll just ask you to consider joining. As we prepare for the election in 2026, we need, it's great to have more people on board and more resources available as well. So you can join through the website, very easy. It's a very low cost undertaking. We don't ask for too much money, not at this stage anyway. So, and I'm sure you'll get some great benefits out of it. So, welcome along. You might realise we are on the Tamaki electorate. We're not in the Epsom electorate. The boundary is actually just about 5 minutes drive down the road, so we're kind of close to Epsom, which is good, because that's where this whole thing started, basically. I'll take you back to 2014, the general election, when David Seymour put his name forward to be the candidate for Epsom and was chosen and contested that election and retained the seat of Epsom for the ACT Party, and went on to do so in 2017, where he was back in there by himself into Parliament, 2020, where we had a great result and got 10 MPs, and then 2023, where we increased the number of MPs to 11 MPs. Now, you may be aware that David seems to spend half his time thanking people for their contributions, their donations, their time spent as volunteers. But given that we have a large number of supporters in the room this morning, I'd like you to put your hands together, please, to thank David Seymour for his work over the past 10 plus years. Because it really has been his tenacity, his perseverance, his determination, and basically his talent that has gotten the party to where we are today. And where we are today is that, as from yesterday, David is the Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand. And I'm going to say that again because I can't quite believe it, the Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand. Now, some people, especially in the media, seem to be a little bit exercised about this. And of course, David has in fact been the acting Prime Minister of New Zealand over the past 18 months on 2 or 3 occasions when the other 2 people have been out of the country. And you may have seen in the media at that time, some of them were a little bit exercised as that maybe things are going to go awry, given that David's in charge for a few days. But he's always taken the view that, hey, look, no, guys, it's going to be okay. You know, that the world is not going to end. It really is nothing to worry about. And indeed, there has been nothing to worry about. So when Parliament resumes or starts to sit again on Tuesday, there will be a change in the seating arrangements. Some of you may have actually, when you've been in Wellington, sat in to view Parliament, especially during question time, which can be quite entertaining, actually, free entertainment. Or you may have seen it on TV. And you may have noticed that New Zealand First, because Winston Peters has been the Deputy Prime Minister, New Zealand First sits on the left-hand side of the National MPs, and the ACT MPs sit on the right side of National. And of course that is going to change as from Tuesday, is that ACT MPs will sit on the left side of National and David will sit to the left of the Prime Minister. And that's not quite right, if you know what I mean. But unfortunately, it's probably out of David's hands as to where they actually sit. But the one, I guess, 2 good things out of that is that our MPs will be further away from the Greens and further away from Te Pāti Maori. So that can't be too bad. So Like I said before, we're in the Tamaki electorate, and it is my job to introduce the MP for the Tamaki electorate, the very talented Brooke Van Velden. And I was lucky enough to be part of her campaign team as it was back in 2023 when we secured the seat. I remember Brooke rang me in February of 2023 and said, it's been decided by the ACT board that we should perhaps consider contesting Tamaki. And I thought, well, that's a little bit ambitious. But anyway, we had a meeting because Brooke said, well, you've done a bit of work in Epsom. And I said, well, yeah, I've done bits and pieces. So we had a meeting and came up with a little bit of a formula, got some other people on board, some of whom were in the room this morning, and it's good to see you. And we ran, I think it was a great campaign. And in the end, it was a successful campaign because Brooke got a huge majority, took a seat that had been held by National since who knows when. You'll all remember back to the days of Sir Robert Muldoon. And so Brooke secured that seat, the second seat for the ACT Party, which was a great achievement. I just want to acknowledge Brooke and her hard work for that campaign. So following on from that, I'd like to introduce Brooke, who will say a few words and then introduce David. Thanks very much.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Tamaki. Look, I've been asked this morning to introduce David Seymour, and I think, like most people around the country, he needs no introduction. Everybody knows David's name. I would say he's the most well-known New Zealand politician in 2025. And look, the relationship that I've had with David is quite a long one. I've known the guy for nearly over 10 years. And I can't believe that I'm saying this, but I've worked in Parliament with David for nearly 8 years, which is making me feel old. But I've also been his deputy leader for coming up 5 years as well. And many people in this room will have had their own relationships with David. And one of the things that I think brings us all together this morning is that it's a very difficult job to be in Parliament, to take your life down to another city for multiple days of a week and come back. And to be able to do that well, you've got to have support around you. And I know the people in this room are here today because, like me, they want to support David. And they want to support his vision for the country and the vision of the ACT Party and to see this grow. Because I believe that ACT can even grow from here and do even better. But as you know, David is the new Deputy Prime Minister. We're going to need even more support because, like John was alluding to, sometimes the media don't play fair. We need to get our own voice out there. We need to speak to the people in our own lives and pass that message on for ourselves about ACT's vision and how we can make a difference in our own lives. But today we're here to discuss a man who's made a difference in many, many New Zealanders' lives. But he's made a huge difference in his own life, going from holding the ACT Party with one MP to being a strong leader for a party with multiple MPs, and now becoming the Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand. And so I've known him for a long time. He's a witty man, he's a funny man, he's a smart man, but he's a hard-working, honest New Zealander. And so, without further ado, I would like to introduce New Zealand's newest Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Brooke, for that kind introduction and warm welcome. I was reading a quote that begins, "It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men and women." And that was Sam Adams, one of the United States founding fathers. So many people here today, and some who sadly couldn't be, fit Sam Adams' description. I know that there's one or two people here who are, occasionally irate. And to get this far, we've had to be tireless. And I suspect we'll always be a minority, but we'll succeed by setting those brush fires in people's minds. Human freedom, to do what you like if you don't harm others, is the only thing that's truly worth fighting for, because only when that principle prevails can we turn our efforts to fighting problems in the natural world instead of each other. Now, this is no swan song, it's just a little rest before the next climb, perhaps the next setback. We've had lots of both, and we'll have lots more. But today's an opportunity to thank each person here for their efforts setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of New Zealanders, and to recommit ourselves to our mission of promoting a free society. Now, it hasn't always been easy. If I had to pick a theme song for the last 10 years, it could be Mark Knopfler, The Scaffolder's Wife. Mark always writes with great empathy for the struggling. And he says, in the wicked old days when we went it alone, kept the company going on a wing and a prayer. Those words really stick with me because they sum up the first 6 years of leading ACT. In fact, it hasn't just been a bit difficult. Most of the time, it seemed bloody impossible. In fact, it's a happy miracle that our party even exists. There's no party committed to human freedom anywhere in the world as successful as ACT. And the reason why is most politicians find it too easy to get votes by promising other people's money or promising to regulate other people's freedom. We, for better or worse, take the hard road. We seek to win political power by promising voters only the freedom to make the most of their time on earth. And we do so because it's only the creative powers of a free society that can generate the wealth to overcome our many challenges and sorrows. And not only is the mission of ACT fundamentally hard, sometimes one or two of us have made it harder than may have been necessary. I hesitate to bring it up, but once or twice we've burned ourselves on our own brush fires along the way. Our perk buster took a perk, our tough-on-crime guy got convicted, our leadership had a civil war. We were subject to a very unconventional coup. In 2011, we ran the most courageous three-pronged election campaign in modern history. Supply-side economics, one law for all, and freeing the weed. Sadly, while there were constituencies for all three causes, none of them could get along. Then John Banks came along and steadied the ship. And I want to thank John for his unconditional support of this party. Thank you, John. You see, John didn't just allow the party to survive, he allowed it to survive as a Liberal party. And I can only imagine being turned around to vote for gay marriage wasn't easy for John. On the other hand, saying no to Jenny Gibbs isn't easy either. What a conundrum. But John's sacrifices allowed Jamie White and I to run a ticket in 2014. Little did we realise things could still get much, much worse. It turned out that my dear friend with a CV from Cambridge and from heaven was brilliant at everything except for one thing, and sadly that was politics. I say all of this, partly because you've got to have some gallows humour in this business, but also because it forms the backdrop to one hell of a climb. And you have to see where we started to see how far we've come. And that is, in order to see the full achievement of the people in this room, and some who can't be here today, is that we've made ACT the world's most successful classical Liberal party. And for 5 years, nothing we did made a jot of difference. Beth Holbrook, who's here today, my previous deputy leader, organised every conference, slogged it out, and really showed people that politics is hard work. Nonetheless, there was a Facebook group called Is ACT Polling 1% Yet? For about 5 years. It seemed like it would be forever. People said our party was not legitimate. They said we shouldn't even be in Parliament. They said we had no real agency, being an offshoot of another party. And when they talked about us, they didn't talk about what I was saying in the present. Instead, they judged us by things others had done when I was living in another country. And after the election disaster of 2017, I said it didn't matter what our shop was selling. We just couldn't get anyone in the door, let alone getting their wallet out. Now, that kind of relentless doomism we were subjected to was actually the opposite of everything that ACT stands for. Because we believe, as Richard Prebble says, and I've been thinking, great read by the way, that life isn't like bad weather. You can make a difference in your time on earth. Unfortunately, at that time though, some things were like bad weather. We couldn't make it rain financially. Eric Clapton once said that nobody knows you when you're down and out. And I can tell you from experience, no one donates to your political party either. Lindsay Ferguson is one of those people who can't be here today. May he rest in peace. And I remember we got down to $7,000 left and we were going to be evicted from our offices in a few weeks if things didn't change. Lindsay put $5,000 in ACT's account and said, "Don't tell Lynn." I'm not sure if Lynn's here today, but Lynn, it's probably time you can finally know the secret. I used to try and call 2 ACT members every week. And one day I called this guy called Chris Reeve. And I noticed on the party database that his email address was Superman. And then he said, that was 2 unlikely things. He said, "I then want to donate to the ACT Party." I thought, this guy can't be for real. So I earnestly explained where the party was up to and what I needed to raise to keep it going for another year. And Chris looked at me and said, "Mate, I'll do half of that if that Jenny Gibbs will do the other half." I still remember clearly the first time I met her in 2005. She bounded up to me and said, "I'm a social liberal too." Her generous support of ACT is published by the Electoral Commission, but her personal support of successive ACT leaders is not. She's one of the warmest and wisest women in New Zealand, and we're lucky to have her. Sadly, she couldn't be here this morning because she's battling one of these microbes that seem to be going around, but we're very grateful to have her. Now, it's true that not every donor gives in the thousands, but thousands have given donations to keep our party alive, even when it may have seemed like palliative care. And I want to thank everyone who's given to ACT, whether it was $5 or $5,000. Other people give their time. You know, in those wicked old days when we went it alone, I was never really alone because so many people helped, delivering mail, erecting signs, filling out the party accounts, opening up their homes for house meetings. Alison and Stu McFarlane rapidly edited my second book, Own Your Future. They said the timeline was mad. I said we can't move the election. I think that book helped keep the party together in some dark days. Thank you to every single person who endured reading it. Some people probably think that books are a symbol of colonisation anyway. For our supporters, very welcome. And what sets ACT apart is that we're a party of ideas. Some people, meanwhile, believe that a political party is an enormous enterprise with unlimited resources required to govern a country. If you were taking hope or reassurance that we really are heavily resourced and have all this to draw on to govern a country, I'm sorry to disappoint you. We're mainly reliant on wings and prayers than massive resources. One person who found this out the hard way was Malcolm Pollock. Now, Chris Fletcher, Auckland's mother, introduced me to him, and he thought he might get a minor role making tea on the sidelines of this vast edifice. I still don't know how he felt walking out of Fraser's Cafe as the bewildered new chairperson of the party's only functioning electorate committee. Ruan Premathulika, who couldn't be here this morning, became the party president in very similar circumstances. And there's so many Malcolms, Margarets, Ruans and others up and down this country who have volunteered to make our party possible. We have 10 times more members today than we did when Malcolm joined, and perhaps that makes the hardest role being the party president. You're legally responsible for the organisation, but to survive, it needs to change strategy at a moment's notice. It must be the governance equivalent of riding a mechanical bull, 10 tequilas down. I've been lucky to have very patient presidents who've held the ship together, none less than the current President, John Windsor, who's perhaps New Zealand's greatest political activist. John's never met a problem he can't quickly quietly fix signs, mails, volunteers, no problem. They say that amateurs talk strategy and professionals talk logistics. Well, in that sense, John is a true professional and a great ACT president. But there's some roles that are so difficult, we actually need to pay people to do them. That would be our parliamentary staff. And if I've done anything right in politics, it's been attracting and retaining great people. Yesterday, my electorate office staff came with me to Government House for the swearing-in ceremony, and I wanted them to be there because I think they're the best electorate team in the country. I hadn't realised when I wrote that Brooke would be here, but they're one of the best. At least I hadn't thought of it. There's 3 positions in our office, and we've had 1 change in 10 years. So if turnover rates mean anything, then we have a very solid team. And the same goes for our team down in Wellington. We've been ranked as one of the best working environments in the parliamentary precincts year in, year out, and we keep attracting great talent. One example stood out more than any. When Brooke came to work in Wellington, the end-of-life choice bill was still possible, but far from inevitable. In fact, I'd say it probably looked less likely than likely. It got stuck in select committee for 16 months, and the antis refused to be constructive. They just stonewalled it. We couldn't make the changes we needed to get political buy-in. We couldn't do good lawmaking either. We'd have to make these changes in the Committee of the Whole House stage, where each MP can individually vote on every word of the legislation. One wrong vote, and there were hundreds of them, could have completely screwed up the whole bill and made it a nonsense in a heartbeat. And that's when we came up with the idea of the sponsors report. If 8 MPs on a select committee, supported by the might of the Ministry of Health, couldn't come up with a coherent set of reforms to a bill, then one 26-year-old woman with a sharp mind would. And that sponsors report remains one of the most effective policy documents ever produced in New Zealand. It was written by Brooke, but like Helen Clark, I just signed it. In the end, we got MPs to vote for every change we needed and oppose every change that would have stuffed it up. Besides Brooke, of course she's now our Deputy Leader, there have been 13 other new ACT MPs in the last decade. And they've been extraordinary. Nicole, Chris, Simon, James, Karen, Mark, Tony, Damien, Todd, Andrew, Paramjit, Laura and Cameron have been exceptional as a team of players. However, they've also formed a great playing team. And we know that a playing team always beats a team of players. Today, our MPs in government are delivering that real change that you asked for and we campaigned on. Our parliamentarians are taking on the scourge of deepfake porn. I bet you Roger Douglas never thought that would become a cause when he founded the party. We're standing up for academic freedom. We're keeping a watchful eye on the bureaucracy for farmers and tradies alike. In government, our ministers are reforming. Brooke's taking on our calcified health and safety laws and the hoary old Holidays Act. Nicole is finally delivering a rational approach to firearms law, even as she changes the courts to speed up the clogging. Karen is turning the department that failed her so deeply and personally into an effective protector of those who come after her, while Andrew stands up for the property. Thank you. Andrew, meanwhile, is standing up for the property rights of farmers when he defends New Zealand's biosecurity. And Simon Court may be the unsung hero of this government, because delivering resource management law based on property rights will do more for the people who live in this country than any other reform under this government this term. But of course the party's also bringing back charter schools, opening up overseas investment, saving the taxpayer billions, bringing Pharmac into the 21st century, slashing red tape and legislating the Regulatory Standards Bill, so for the first time our property rights will be in law. We've been busy, that's true, but other people have helped act in much more creative and unexpected ways. Take yourself back to March 2018, when the female pro dancers first got together for the 2018 season of Dancing with the Stars. They all agreed on one thing: nobody wanted to be paired with that guy. It was a guaranteed ticket home on the first elimination. Even my own family came to opening night. They thought it would be their only chance and I might need consolation after the show. And if I'd had any other partner except Amelia McGregor, they would have been right. But we ended up campaigning on, as much as dancing, politics. We took on the bullies and fought for the downtrodden, the overlooked and the physically uncoordinated, all up and down New Zealand. The kindest thing the judge has ever said is that I proved absolutely anyone could dance. I think that's what our tireless minority has proven over the years. With the quiet determination, we can change our future and the future course of this country. Anyone can dance. And that's why we stand for the farmers, the landlords, the licensed firearm owners, the free speech advocates, the small business owners, the ethnic and religious minorities of this country. Because everyone has the right to live free in the country because anyone can dance. And why New Zealand needs more of a movement like ours? Well, let's get into the future, because this must have all sounded a bit nostalgic. If our opponents have read this far, which is unlikely because you had me at read, they're probably hoping the speech is building up to a grand retirement. I've talked about how we got to today only because it's worth pausing and looking back from time to time. It's essential to acknowledge and thank the many people who got us this far. We should, as our stalwart member Vince Ashworth says, foster a culture of appreciation. That said, I'm not going anywhere but ahead. So sorry, Labor. ACT remains your worst nightmare and New Zealand's best hope. You know, nearly every single press release from Labor, every fundraising email, every talking point is about how dangerous David Seymour is. I get so much free accommodation living in Willie Jackson's head. I might, I'll have to check with our whip, Todd Stevenson. I think I'm going to have to declare it in the Parliamentary Register of Interest. So, to Labor, yes, I am dangerous, but only to you and your batty outriders. What's more, your strategy of directing attention to ACT will backfire. Because to paraphrase Brer Rabbit, we're born and bred under political pressure. And when you put the spotlight on ACT, you show the people of this country a party with the attitude the country needs. We can be down and out through the wicked old days and rise again. We've been able to do it because we have something you can never take from us, our philosophy. Our core beliefs are the beliefs that founded this country. Wave after wave of migrants have taken huge risks to give their children a better life on these remote islands. We are a nation of pioneers, united in the belief that things can get better no matter how hard they seem. There is always hope. We don't discriminate against each other based on things we can't change about ourselves. We only discriminate based on the choices people do make. Human freedom and personal responsibility under the law. We know that the world is unpredictable, and the only path to success is letting 1,000 flowers bloom, looking for success that we can push up instead of pulling down. Our opponents are a Labor Party, best described as lost, a Green Party that barely talks about the environment. Once upon a time, they wanted to sacrifice the economy for the environment. These days, the Green Party wants to sacrifice the economy for no reason at all. And then there's the extraordinary spectre of a race-based political party that increasingly threatens violence to its opponents, tolerated by the media. What unites them is a poverty of spirit. Their idea that other people's success is not an example of what's possible, but somehow the source of their supporters' problems. And they traffic in the idolisation of envy. And even if they manage to sell it, it still won't work. ACT, on the other hand, and our celebration today shows that anyone can dance. Yes, our country faces problems, but we know in ACT how to overcome them. Starting with the simple belief, when it seemed easiest to give up, you may find that actually you were just turning the corner. Today, there are too many Kiwis leaving and not enough be leaving. I believe our country remains a good bet. We have no excuse for not creating a great country on these islands, but it's the culture that matters. And the real culture war today is not about which bathroom you go to. It's about whether we're here to push people up or pull them down. Can we move past the dark underbelly of tall poppy and celebrate the achievements of Shepherd, Rutherford, Ngata and Hillary, and those many more to come. We have to believe that life is a positive-sum game, that win-wins are possible, that if we treat each other with mutual respect and dignity, we might surprise each other. We can become an Athens of the modern world, a place where creative people are welcome to move and invest, where they find themselves joining people already here who fundamentally believe the point of our country is to make success possible. Every policy we make in government should be measured against the simple test: will this policy create an environment for New Zealanders to solve problems and make tomorrow better than today? It's actually what used to be called progressive. It used to be an idea owned by the left, but they're too busy tearing people down and putting them in boxes, virtue signalling, categorising and otherwise discriminating. If there's any party that can offer the values and the grit to take this country out of the doldrums and the constant meh that befalls New Zealand today, it's the party that's had to overcome the great Kiwi knocking machine from palliative care to the centre of government. And that effort would not have been possible without the people in this room and beyond who believed in us when no one else would, because they believe in the party's ideas. Thank you for getting us to this milestone, and buckle yourselves in, because in Hillary terms, this today is only base camp. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.